Looks like game number 2, Tyler Anderson's up a game. As expected, this Bant Ramp versus Team Wreck matchup does go long, but Bant Ramp usually going to be the one that comes out on top. But let's see if Scooter can take one back in game number 2.
Oh. This is actually our deciding
Never
game
mind.
number 3 we see here. Anderson's going for an Uro. Just the front side, that'll put a Temple of Enlightenment on the battlefield, looking at an Ether Gust on the top. That's generally pretty good. He'll keep that.
Looks like we have our next to last semifinalist in Del Toro taking Aaron Diaz down. And Del Toro, I believe, is also playing that Bant Ramp. Diaz, I expected to have a tough matchup, and Del Toro does take it easily with that 2-0 victory. So this is our last quarterfinal match. We figure out our top 4 here at the inaugural championship qualifier here on the SCG Tour Online.
Eric Johnson going to work with a Night Pack Ambusher. Now we see Tyler Anderson drawing that Ether Gust. Can try to even up the battlefield here. Not exactly clear what happened in the early turns, but there are 2 Narsets hanging out in Anderson's hand. That's great if you can get it down early. It's looking a little clunky now. It looks like just a draw and a pass on this turn for Anderson.
Yeah, he's playing a very reactive game, which is hard to do against Nightpack Ambusher, but the moment the shields are down are when you can usually pounce. Like here, this Ether Gust is likely going to tag the Nightpack Ambusher while there's no threat of like a negate or anything. But the problem is that Johnson just added another huge threat to the board with that 4/4 Shark from Shark Typhoon.
Yeah, you answer the Ambusher, and that's a creature factory that represents more and more threats down the line, but there's still a lot of power on the table with that Shark joining the party.
Yeah, and it looks like a buddy Scooter here is putting himself in a pretty good position. He has a lot of power on the battlefield. Doesn't even really care that much about the Ambusher. Gonna let that one go. Still slamming in for 6, and let's see if Tyler can put anything on the table next turn.
That was interesting. Anderson went for the Ether Gust after Johnson untapped. It seemed like he wanted Johnson to use his mana. Did not bite. Now we got Uro showing up. Johnson has found that Night Pack Ambusher again. That was put on top. No other play for Anderson. We go back his way.
Yeah, and that's some absurd discipline from Scooter there. Eric Johnson on top of your screen had the option to play Wilderness Reclamation into Nightpack Ambusher / untapping all his mana. Chose to just sit back on his heels. Has a dominant board position. Doesn't want the resolution of any of these Planeswalkers from the other side to come through. Content to play a game at instant speed because Eric knows that his deck operates at instant speed much better.
So that time the Ambusher was tagged by Mystical Dispute. Now Anderson's looking at a Petty Theft to maybe try to answer one of these tokens. But hasn't really been able to establish anything on the battlefield just yet.
Mm-hmm. Gonna search up a forest here. That's the second green needed for Euro, while also going to be bluffing a Mystical Dispute. So it'll be interesting to see if Eric is able to sniff this out. I think it's a pretty safe Wilderness Reclamation turn. He didn't cast it last turn, which is probably why Tyler just said, okay, I got to let the shields down. Plus, you have to start dealing with some of these threats. They're just going to kill you if you don't.
Yeah, Petty Theft tags the Shark. Now, Johnson, considering his options.
Yeah, he can Expansion Explosion for 8. I think that's the bottom of the barrel as far as what you want to do, because you don't want to just jam into the Mystical Dispute. I think Expansion Explosion for 5 is pretty solid. Other than that, you still want to hold up the Ether Gust, and you want to maybe hold up some other counter spells of some kind. So maybe you just do it for X equals 4, restock your hand, still have a bunch of mana at your disposal, including multiple blue mana.
Looks like the number is 5. The Reclamation was good.
Man, I'm so smart!
And Anderson's got nothing to say about that. You see a Mystical Dispute jumping into Johnson's hand here. That's pretty welcome, I would say.
All right. Well, Johnson does have an Ether Gust, so if this Nissa is the card, that Tyler goes for, you got to think that the game is basically over. But Narset's going to be the play.
Yeah, the Nissa, because it would get gusted, but the Narset is just not really an effect that Johnson really cares about.
Sure. I mean, it's not like Eric has the game rolled up. He doesn't have another expansion explosion yet. And Narset does slow down his ability to cycle through the deck and draw a bunch of cards. It'll be interesting to see how Eric decides to play the next turn cycle, because he could just hard cast um, the Brazen Borrower and put Tyler down to 1 if everything resolves.
Narset finds Elspeth Conquers Death. Anderson plays a Temple Garden tapped. And kind of what I was getting at when I said the Narset doesn't matter is more that if the Narset impacts the game positively for Anderson, it's because it invited Johnson to make a mistake around it.
Sure, absolutely. Now there is a borrower hanging out on the bottom, as you can see, for Tyler, so he can play one that is defensive while the shields are down. Now, if he goes for it with the shields are up, it's going to get disputed. Another Reclamation, though, is a nice pickup.
Johnson a little bit shy of a lethal attack, but could just attack down Narset. And actually, both creatures going at Narset. Anderson's going to attempt the Borrower to block.
I feel like you could get away with, if you're going to guaranteed dispute that Borrower, I think you send 2 at the face. I think that's a easy pick. As you can see, Tyler was hovering over the good game emote, assuming that he was dead to the second expansion explosion. But fortunately for him right now, it's not there. Not yet. Here comes Euro from the graveyard, I believe. Eric Johnson's going to be escaping that thing from the underworld. And then he's going to untap his lands at EOT, looking for another expansion explosion to end the game right here and send him to the top 4.
It could play another Uro for a redraw before the untap. Could play a second Reclamation. That doesn't really do too much, though.
Yeah, I'm very much against the second Reclamation here, if only because it does nothing like this turn. Now, for next turn, maybe it does overkill, right? Like the first one is enough. The second one is just overkill at this juncture.
Yeah, goes with the Uro. It's redraw. It's an expansion.
That's it.
That looks like lethal.
As long as Eric sets a stop during his end step and floats the mana correctly, game should be over, folks.
Here's an untap with Reclamation, 2 mana floating. There was already enough there. Anderson's just on 6. It looks like Eric Johnson will be advancing to the semifinals.
Yeah, and congratulations to him fighting through what I consider to be a very tough matchup there. Takes it down 2-1 in favor of Team of Reclamation, and it's the talk of the tournament. I think at the very beginning we were talking all about that Orzhov